So my name is Sand Duff. I'm the careers advisor for the College for Arts, and I am very, very excited today to have with us in the big brave Andrew Cotter. Andrew, you're very welcome.
Hello, nice to be here.
So there's a few little housekeeping things I need to go through before we get started talking, Andrew. So at any time during the webinar, you'll have the opportunity to submit your questions to Andrew. To do so, just type your question into the Q&A at the bottom of the control panel. As time allows, I will ask as many questions as I can during the Q&A. If time does not permit, you can email your questions to careers@glasgow.ac.uk and we will forward them on. And we will be recording this webinar and we'll share the link after the event if you want to rewatch it or share it with any of your friends. So what is the Big Brave? So the Big Brave is the closing event for each of our careers fairs. It offers you the opportunity to hear a career story from an ambitious and accomplished person who has achieved success due to their bravery, passion and sheer determination to make an impact. This Q&A is designed to answer the pressing questions that are relevant to you right now and in the future. We have lots of Big Braves scheduled and I recommend you have a look at Glasgow Careers to find out more about your other great speakers. However, on to today's great speaker. So today we have with us Andrew Cotter, who is a sports broadcaster and author. Originally from Troon in the southwest of Scotland, Andrew graduated in French and philosophy in 1996 and is well known as one of the UK's leading sports broadcasters. Working mostly with the BBC, he has established himself as a familiar voice across a number of sports, covering events such as rugby's Six Nations, the Masters, Open and Ryder Cup in golf, as well as Wimbledon and the boat race. One of the proudest moments in his career was leading the commentary on the opening ceremony at the Olympic Games. Despite all of that, he has become more widely known for the videos he has produced at the start of COVID-19 pandemic, involving his lovely Labradors, Olive and Mabel. They've accumulated over 70 million views worldwide, and he has written a best-selling book, Olive, Mabel and Me. Oh, there they are.
Yeah, well, one of them.
So, Olive and Mabel, you're very welcome. And
yeah.
Andrew, you're welcome too, of course.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, if it were just them, it would be odd. But they can hold the room. They've got tremendous presence.
Yeah, I agree. So that's a little bit about you. We all know that about you, Andrew. That's kind of, nothing new to any of us that have followed your career or know you as a voice in sports broadcasting. But I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about your career journey in your own words.
Well, I mean, it all seems a long time ago in terms of how it started. That's because it was a long time ago. But yeah, so I, as you say, I'm from Southwest Scotland, and Glasgow University was one of the few universities that would have me because I didn't work very hard at school. Actually, that's not fair because it sounds like Glasgow University will take anybody. It wasn't. It was just that I knew I had a good modern languages department as well, and that was one of the things I wanted to do. I wanted to study French. I'd love to say these were for reasons of I felt it was my calling to study languages because I wanted to work in France, or I wanted to work in, I don't know what, in the European Union in some way. But it wasn't. I was driven by, it sounds terrible to say now, I was driven by all the things that drive young men in terms of a career. I remember someone coming around from university and saying that these, I don't know why they gave the ratio of men to women studying each subject, but I was quite good at languages at school. I was terrible at maths and physics and all sorts of sciences. And he said, and for some reason they gave the percentage of males to females studying, and I saw that there were a huge number of women studying languages at university, and I thought that was really the thing which actually sealed the deal for me. And then I wanted to do psychology, and psychology was oversubscribed. I think we all fancied ourselves being Robbie Coltrane and Cracker at the time, and that we were all going to be these amazing criminal psychologists. And so that was oversubscribed. And then I thought, well, philosophy, it seemed sort of vague, but also very sort of deep and meaningful. And so I chose my subjects. These are terrible reasons for choosing subjects. But once I started the courses, I realized that I really was enjoying them. Even philosophy, which when you, I'll get to my career in a minute, but when you get to, I'm sure there'll be questions on various reasons that people study things. But when you get into your first philosophy lecture, we didn't study philosophy in secondary school. So you go into study philosophy into your first lecture. And it was about Descartes, I think it was. And you sit there going, is this really what we're going to do? Debate whether we actually exist or not? That seems like nonsense. But hey, I'm up for the ride. So, and then you realize it got far more complex, and there were greater arguments and debates and discussions to be had, and that it was in reasoning and logic and whatever it might be. But I remember university hitting you so fast and hard, because it was so different to anything we'd done at secondary school, because I'm not sure that secondary school prepared me for the studies involved in university. But anyway, sorry, you asked me about my career. This is the ramblings of a philosophy graduate, is that I didn't know what I wanted to do. Again, I'm not painting a very positive picture of my life choices and how determined I was to do a certain thing. I wasn't. I wandered around in a sort of vague cloud of not knowing what I wanted to do. Even after I graduated, I worked as a waiter in Regano in Glasgow, which I think might have closed recently, or certainly temporarily has closed, as many things have. But I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to do something with words, with language, and that steers you a little bit towards the media. And Regano was a big media hangout as well. So, and I thought, these people seem to have quite the life of Riley. Again, I'm showing you very shallow reasons for choosing a career. But again, then I went into local radio. And from there, that's when you sort of fall into something. It's not been a clear path or a clear destination, the goal that you've had in mind for a long time. You kind of fall into it, but then you realize you enjoy it and you can do it. And then you're more set in your career. So it's from local radio in Scotland, a radio station called Scot FM, which was based in Edinburgh, but it was the Central Belt, and QFM in Paisley, and that was the sister station. And then you started doing everything in sports broadcasting. I'd applied for a news job, actually, but given a sports job because I had plenty of sports interests on my CV. And then it sort of went from there. But again, I wasn't sitting as a 12, 13-year-old saying, I want to work in radio or television. I want to be a sports broadcaster and practicing little sports commentaries. I had no idea. Through university. So I always say to people, how do you get into this, or what should I be doing, or what? If you don't know, don't panic, because there are so many careers out there. Especially if you do an arts degree, which doesn't necessarily qualify you for something specific. It just shows that you can think and hopefully apply yourself and write some essays and show original thought. And so it gives you that grounding. And then, there are any number of jobs you can do. The world is your oyster. Well, it's nobody's oyster at the moment. The world is, we're all inside the oyster. We can't get out the oyster. We're just battering at the shell. Strange metaphor. Anyway, we're all pearls trying to get out of an oyster. But yes, it was local radio was the path in. But again, people now studying communications or broadcasting or media or film and television, the world is very different in terms of how you get into television careers, because you would probably start your own YouTube channel and you'd do stuff, or it's so much easier now to make films, make television. I mean, the little videos I make of Olive and Mabel, they are edited on iMovie and they're filmed on I could film on this here with it, and you can film in 4K, and you can film in a real film quality. It's extraordinary. Whereas back when I was doing it, there wasn't any outlet really for that, unless you had sort of hardcore equipment that it was very difficult to get your hands on. So anyway, at the end of all that rambling, I don't know how I ended up in this career, but I took to it quite quickly and really started to enjoy it once I had fallen into it.
I think that's really interesting, Andy. And there's a couple of things I'm going to come back to and pick up on that I think are really relevant to the listeners, especially art students. But we've had a couple of questions. You are a graduate from the School of Philosophy, and we've had a couple of questions from philosophy.
Please tell me they're not about philosophy, because I can remember studying Gadamer and
yeah. So the first one is Kant. Second one,
something about reasoning. I don't know.
No, I jest.
Oh, God.
So you completed a non-vocational degree. So I think you've touched on this already. But how do you think it prepared you for what you're doing now? Is there anything you think you learn, whilst you were studying that arts degree in philosophy and French that you still use in your work today?
Um, Well, I remember thinking an 800 or 1500, those were the two sort of in French, and I think possibly in philosophy as well. Those were the two sort of lengths of essays we had to do, 800 words and a 1500 word, and then you'd maybe write a longer thesis towards the end of things. And that seemed to me at the time how can I find 800 words? And I've got to write a 1500 word article later today, and you'll do it in about an hour or so. But in those days, it took me about a month to do it, and then you'd ask for an extension to the deadline because this 800 word essay is beyond me. So it kind of prepared you and didn't prepare you for the real world, because you thought it was hard work at the time, and perhaps things have changed a lot in 25 years, but it wasn't really. I remember, as I say, getting into my first job, which was at Scott FM radio, and I remember having to churn out bulletins just and writing copy to deadlines just every half hour, never mind every 2 weeks or so. So the real world hit me far harder than university did, because university is a slow sort of incline into the real world, whereas then the real world just comes and hits you like a wall. But I think what it did show, as I was mentioning, is how to try and think and reason and argue and debate and all these things that you need to. I was a very sort of not too introverted, but I didn't. What university did for me was it actually prepared you for being an adult from being a child, and it's all the things outside of your actual courses in terms of renting a place or living away from your parents, or just being an adult and doing adult things like cooking and shopping. I know this sounds like this has nothing to do with philosophy, but those were the greatest things that I found from university, that you were able to enter the adult world. Not enter the adult world, that sounds rather seedy. Enter the world of adults again still. So it was more in that way that it prepared me. But yes, I think philosophy, just being able to think and reason and debate and structure arguments, I think that was the most important thing about philosophy, because those talents will always stand you in good stead. They're needed in every walk of life, and every job, to present your case and present yourself. That was the other thing as well. When you're up there when you have to do a presentation at a tutorial, is that I remember at a philosophy presentation once with a small tutorial room. I think it was in Oakfield Avenue, and I was giving this dates me. It was an overhead projector presentation, and doing this presentation, and you could see the shadow of my hand shaking. And one of the tutors had fallen asleep, incidentally. He was a lovely man, very, very bright guy, but he dozed off at some point during my presentation. The other one was alert, so there was somebody marking me. But I remember being so nervous. And now what I do, you would think it's so strange that I bound up on stages or whatever to do hosting of events, and you're commentating to millions of people, and you feel a little bit of nervous tension, but I look back now and look at that and think that's kind of what it teaches you to do, to stand up in front of people and present your case, and as I say, argue and debate and think. And these sound like obvious things, but they're not particularly obvious, because I think when you're at school, everything is done for you, and whereas at university you have to generate things yourself. So it's about becoming an individual person. University.
And you've spoken about this, that you use the term falling into the role at Scott FM, and there wasn't a huge amount of, it was very intuitive what you did from school through university and your first jobs. And Laura, who's studying education, would like to ask, maybe going forward from there, to what extent did you plan your career moves, and how much came about naturally?
Again, once I was in there, it was more planned, because you then think you can see a sort of pathway into into doing, I didn't do commentary when I was at Scott FM because they didn't have any rights to doing live commentary. So you're doing actually just bulletins and interviews and presenting programs. And then when I went down to, I wanted to get to London because I wanted to I was never really a huge football person. I loved all sports. But if you want to do multi-sports, you couldn't do it in Scotland necessarily because it was all about football. It was all about Rangers and Celtic. So I wanted to do golf and tennis and athletics and whatever it might be. And to do that and rugby, you have to go down to London. So for then you're thinking, right, how can I make this next move? And you find out that a lot of it is to do with contacts. And if you don't have this contacts, you could send in all the demo tapes in the world and you could be very good at what you do. And it's not going to make much of a difference. It's until you get a recommendation from somebody. And it was a recommendation from Five Lives, a BBC Five Lives person up in Scotland who recommended me to someone down in London. Then the door opens. And once the door opens, then you're in. But you have to be so patient because you can knock away on that door on your own for a long time, and you'll not get anywhere. And but all the time, as I say, so while I was working at Scott FM, I was meeting people and you're establishing those contacts. And then that person from Five Live who I met at interviews of, Hearts or Hibs or Rangers or Celtic, he realizes that you're a decent operator. So he recommends you for some freelance shifts down in London. And then you can start to map things out more clearly, but still a huge amount of good fortune is involved in terms of timing. They needed a new golf commentator for the team when I got down there, and a new rugby commentator. So timing is very, very important. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that if you have all the skill and hard work in the world that things are going to happen for you, because you've still got to have that luck. But if you hang around long enough doing the job, then you're bound to roll a six eventually. Your luck will happen. And yes, you do make your own luck to a certain extent in that you have to be good at the job for people to notice you, but it still involves a bit of fortune and good timing.
It's really interesting because yesterday we had a conversation about moving into theatre, and it was thinking about the 3 pillars that are really relevant that you need to sort of have or be able to do. And the first one is luck, is being able to capitalize on luck.
Yeah.
So luck comes your way, like exactly what you're saying about putting contacts out there. But I think there's a lot to be said about your manner with people.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I mean, so important to present. And again, when I went to university, I wouldn't meet people's gaze at all, and I wasn't very good at conversation, as we're finding out just now. I wasn't, but you have to. These are skills you have to learn, because in every job, whatever walk of life you decide to go into, being able to sell yourself. I mean, you can say you can be the biggest idiot in the world, and you can become, you can reach the very top of the world as long as you sell yourself with confidence. So we've seen that, and I'm not saying that I would hate the thought that people were just relying on bluster and nonsense to get somewhere. You've got to have something behind it, but you've got to be able to present yourself in a confident and friendly, affable manner. Someone that people will think, well, I'd love to do business with this person. I'd love to take this person on. They're going to be an asset to this production. They're going to be an asset to this company. So it's I think, possibly the most important thing. And that's what it comes back to. You might think when you're doing a presentation at university that, why is this presentation on Merleau-Ponty or Foucault? Why is this important at all? It's not. Well, it is, because the presentation itself is. It's how you do things. It's you're learning, picking up skills all the time in being able to converse. And everything you do is projecting yourself as an asset. And also, it's just a nicer way to be, a better way to be able to deal and converse with people in a decent manner. I think it's interesting. Whenever I deal with American people, they seem to have a lot more at secondary school. I always wonder if it came through the whole show and tell thing of having to stand up when you're even in elementary school and talk about an object or talk about whatever subject it might be. It's communication seems to be a very, very important thing for people in America. And I think over here we've got a certain British UK reticence. Certainly in Scotland we don't do communication very well, but you have to in the world at large, we'll get back out there eventually. You really have to get on in the world.
Yeah, I agree, absolutely. I did a little bit of work a few years ago in TV, and when people asked me afterwards, not coming from that background, when people asked me afterwards, what were they like? For all the nice things you could say and how skilled they were, the one thing that really stuck out to me was how charming everybody was how charming and how nice they actually were to each other. Because, as one person that works in television told me, says, it doesn't, you're only sort of as good as your last job, and then you need people to recommend you for the next one.
Yeah, they might be saying behind your back, "God, he's awful," but up front, it's absolutely true, and it's nice to see niceness, to have people saying nice things about you, and certainly in theatre, I'd probably go over the top and say, "What, that was a fantastic performance, darling." God, it was awful, but that's again, that's the way the world works as well, isn't it? It's but I've been fortunate in terms of broadcasting. I found the areas I've worked in broadcasting, the people are genuinely nice, and I think there's a lot of genuineness. Of course, there are people. There's always ambition in people, and it creates certain tensions at certain times. That's how it's just a human nature. But I think it is. I've been fortunate to work in an area where people are genuinely nice and supportive, and hopefully I've been supportive to other people as well. That's just the way you do things if you're a decent human being. So yes, as I say, it's having a bright and outgoing personality might go against it probably goes against my natural instinct, because I am quite a little bit doer sometimes. But when you're actually public facing, or when you're doing your job, when you're dealing with people in the workplace, you have to put that to one side and try and just sell yourself and get on with people a little bit better. And that's something, again, that you learn as you go through. I was at university for 5 years, and from going there, I was a child, and then when you come out, you're hopefully, as I say, an adult. And if you're not, you certainly learn within 6 months of starting an actual job. Right, okay, the real world is slightly different.
So there's a few questions coming in here, Andrew. A couple about your latest career pivot, but we'll try and take it chronologically and kind of keep moving through where you were in your broadcasting career.
It's just soothing.
She's really enjoying this.
Well, Olive's left. She got bored. She does her own thing, but Mabel will Mabel's quite clingy, so there we are.
Oh, you're very, very welcome, Mabel. So Crystal has asked a question here. You said you didn't know what you wanted to do after you graduated. If you were to be a graduating student again, would you do anything differently in order to help yourself and find work that you feel passionate about? Even more so, would you do anything differently if you were graduating in the year 2021?
I wouldn't do anything differently to what I did. I just because it all seems to have worked out, but I don't think I would have done anything differently. I did find it quite hard leaving university, because it's like to me at the time, it was kind of like the Garden of Eden, and you're chucked out. I enjoyed, especially the last 2 years of university, I enjoyed it so much that I wasn't prepared for getting into the real world. I don't know again now if it's such a jarring difference between university, and maybe you're prepared a little bit better for it, but it was sort of academia, when you were there, and it was fun. It was again, especially studying arts, studying an arts degree. I don't think it necessarily prepares you for the graft of a job. So I wasn't particularly ready for it. So I would maybe try and, if I knew what I know now, I would have been a bit more ready for the actual work of life. Nowadays, if I were going out and the world of media has just transformed. I mean, it's changed in the last 5 years, let alone the last 25 years. But I would definitely do things differently in terms of, I would probably want to get into filmmaking. That's what I'd probably want to, and I would be able to. I would start making my own films. But again, that seems such a daunting thing, how to start making your own films. But again, you go back to the world changing, and we've all got amazing devices here for for filming, for making things. And so I'm not sure I would have ended up in sports broadcasting, because I might have gone down a different path. So, and as I said, you now would be broadcasting on YouTube. You might only have 2 subscribers initially, but you might be able to sort of start doing something interesting and entertaining and building it from there. I wish I had started YouTubing when it started. Although it's kind of taken off in the last year or so due to dog stuff. But I just think there are more facilities now for broadcasting yourself, everybody is their own TV channel now. Everybody can do their own thing now, whereas it used to be you would have to get into an established channel, and that was so difficult. So yeah, I think I would do things differently in 2021 in terms of putting myself out there. I might even be on TikTok. I wouldn't. I mean, Mabel would do TikTok. I wouldn't do TikTok.
One of the pieces of advice that I give to students, Andrew, is don't wait for permission. Exactly what you say. Don't wait for somebody to give you a job. Don't wait to get into an organisation. Don't wait for somebody to give you permission to start making content. Just start making content.
Start making content, exactly that, because then you'll get to meet somebody who is in the established part of the industry. They'll say, what do you do? What can you show me? And you say, well, here's a link. Here's it's something I made. Here's me performing. I can't give advice on that part of them, because I'm so detached from it now in terms of moving from university into that, in these circumstances with all the technology that's available to us now. But you're absolutely right. Do not wait for it. Make stuff, come up with ideas. Think of ideas. That's what, it's funny how she's gone as well. The hardest part about making more of and Mabel videos is thinking of an idea. And that's why, and we can all do that. We can all think of ideas, think of stories, read, absorb stuff all the time and think, oh, maybe I'd quite like to, okay, I could write a little script, and I could get somebody to perform it, film it, etc. And then you show it to someone and they say, well, that's great. That doesn't work so much. Maybe you could do this. And you're learning all the time. And you're also showing people that you are keen and perhaps have a talent for it. So absolutely, don't wait until someone says, oh yes, come on board, because you've shown us nothing, but come on board anyway. You've got to start doing things yourself.
One of the other questions here that's come in, Andrew, is any tips for an aspiring sports journalist and broadcaster?
Well, again, it's similar in terms of there was an established path there were a few paths when I was starting out. Some people actually came from the world of drama. I remember a lot of the sort of broadcasters, whereas for most people, they came through local radio, which is still an avenue, but it's not quite as well funded, I think, as it used to be. A few local stations are sort of disappearing or don't have their own sports departments. But again, that's because all the platforms for sport are changing. Established platform. I mean, if you look, there's never been more sport on television, and by television I mean every avenue for broadcast, whether it be streaming or whether it be traditional free-to-air television. But you look at all the channels available, and it's not just ITV, Sky, the BBC, Channel 4, Channel 5. It is Netflix, it's Amazon Prime Video, and I've worked for Prime Video, it's BT Sport. So there have never been more sports broadcasters required. But again, it's, yes, absolutely. How do you get into it? Well, then I used to have to try and make up a demo tape. Now you could do a commentary yourself. You could take, with their permission, you could take a bit of a football game or a rugby or whatever it might be, and try your own commentary over it and edit that onto it and send it off to just send the link off to people. So that I think that it used to be local newspapers or local radio, and then into trying to get into the bigger network stations if possible. But now there are lots of different ways in, and again, setting yourself up with your own channel where you discuss sport. Perhaps you're interviewing people. And it might start with interviewing somebody in your, in a local county team or a club team or whatever, but then you might have a chance to interview through some contacts, get a chance to interview a big name in sport, and then you put that around. So listen, again, I can't say that you've still got to have that luck, but you've got to have patience and be able to work hard as well. It's there's no way around having to work at it. It's not going to come to you immediately. I mean, I remember when I eventually got into Scott FM radio, and I remember doing 63 days in a row without a day off, and that's what kind of hits you after university. Thought, I remember I couldn't get that 800-word essay done. And there you are working 63 days in a row without a break, because nothing comes to you without hard work as well. And things perhaps get a bit easier the later in your career you get, but you're still working hard. I mean, I've got to go straight from here to do a rare bit of work on some athletics this evening, and the prep for athletics is you've got to do so much research on all the athletes involved, and it's hard work. So I'm digressing somewhat here. You're just asking about how to get into sports broadcasting. There is no set way, but local radio is still a place to ask and say, have you got anything going? Can I do a couple of weeks here, or would you like to see something I've done, some work I've done and posted on my YouTube channel, or here's a demo I've made. So just keep asking, keep trying.
And I think as well, the content around sports is changing. I don't know if it was last night or the night before. It was the night before. I was watching Sky Sports, and this program came on about racism in sport and about homophobia in sport. And it really did this really deep dive into women's football, Black players, players that come out as gay, and it was really interesting. It was on Sky Sports, but it was from a totally different perspective, and I thought that was a really interesting piece of content.
Because there's if you look at Sky, they have more than 4 channels in terms of Sky Sports, and they have a lot of hours to fill. So, and they have funding, so they're not just covering sport, but they're making documentaries. So, I think sometimes when you go into sports broadcasting, people pigeonhole you as some sort of Alan Partridge character. I love sport. I love sport. But you get some very talented broadcasters and filmmakers in sport. It's just another subject matter. There are some great documentaries out there. There's obviously whatever it might be on that subject you're talking about, those subjects you're talking about there. I remember the Ayrton Senna film. There was a great Tiger Woods documentary, it's sports. Broadcasting is just broadcasting, and sports filmmaking is just filmmaking. You can be as creative as you would be covering any number of topics. So I think the key thing is broadcast. Just don't think of sports broadcasting as this narrow field. It's just broadcasting, and the best broadcasters would be able to broadcast on any number of topics because they have that ability, that fluency of language and that turn of phrase and that ability to hold a camera. So yes, and that's why, again, I wouldn't necessarily think I want to get into sports broadcasting because I applied for a news job in local radio all those years ago. So if you apply for if you get offered a job in some other field of broadcasting, you can move about within those subject matters in broadcasting, not easily, but it's certainly possible. I think what people are looking for is just an ability to do the job in terms of broadcasting, whether it's in sport or whether it's in news or whether it's in making documentaries. So don't narrow your field too much.
So I think we talked quite a lot about your sports broadcasting career. So I think now's the moment to pivot, as you have pivoted in the last year, Andrew.
I was pivoted though. I kind of pivoted myself, but it was out of necessity. And it wasn't when I made the first comment, that was sort of parody sports commentary over dogs. I had no idea that it was going to go like this, and it wasn't with a plan that I've got to do something else now because all my sports broadcasting work is gone. That just happened. So again, that's a little bit of good fortune allied with hopefully some ability in making some funny videos. But then what happens as well as making the little videos or sketches or whatever you want to call them with Olive and Mabel, then what happens is someone comes in with the offer of a book deal. And I can actually see Eloise has asked the question about how do you go about publishing a book. And unfortunately, again, if you have an idea for a book and you just go cold to publishers, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to get it published. I mean, there are any number of, J.K. Rowling was turned down any number of times. I think Lord of the Flies is one of the most famous ones that was turned down over 100 times by publishers. So, it's quite hard to get something published, and there are any number of very, very talented writers who cannot get something published. Whereas if you look at the top 100 in the book charts, it's celebrity biographies, it's Ant Middleton saying, with self-help books, it's things like that. It's not necessarily people with beautifully written novels. That's not what sells at the moment in publishing. So that's why I was able to get a book deal, because I had viral videos and dogs were involved. So, you know, I'm the first to admit that that was kind of a populist way into writing a book. Then, of course, what you want to do is try and make sure that the book actually is reasonably good, you know, because you don't want to be seen to be just this person scribbling something down, a few photos in there, and let's cash in on the success of some viral videos. So again, that's the fortune that you require to get into writing a book. But of course, that wouldn't allow me to write a novel. They wouldn't give me a deal to write a novel because I've made some videos about dogs. And what's your passion project? To write a novel about 18th century Parisian life? No, you've done a video with dogs. Could you do a funny book about dogs?
Mm-hmm.
So again, certain avenues of publishing are still very much closed off to me, but so yes, the deal came to me rather than me having to go looking for it. So I feel a bit guilty about that, but that's the way the publishing world does work now. It's a sort of gamble on behalf of publishing houses. Right, oh, this is popular, let's try and make something out of that. See if we can take down Philip Schofield's autobiography. So I can't give you know, again, I think patience in terms of, and trying in terms of going cold to publishers and just submitting a novel, it's very, very hard. But if it's good enough, it will get spotted by somebody.
And again, Andrew, one of the concepts that we were discussing yesterday as part of the Creative and Cultural micro-series was this concept of when an opportunity does come out of the blue. So you do everything right, you're at the right place at the right time, the luck, the lightning bolt strikes, and then it's like, wow, I have to do this now. I have to fill my boots in this now.
Yeah.
Which is clearly what you've done. I guess what I'd like to know is, how did that feel for you? I mean,
it feels at the time, it feels quite exciting, but it feels daunting as well, because you know that there's an opportunity there, but all you have to do then is work. I mean, I didn't, you know, see spring or summer last year because I was working on a book, but I was constantly thinking about other videos as well, because the demands were coming in for more videos. And also I knew that if you make more videos, I was kind of entertaining myself and I enjoy making them as much, I suppose, first and foremost, but also you realize that you were generating numbers in terms of followers, in terms of subscribers on YouTube, and eventually YouTube becomes monetized. And I didn't want it to be about that initially, but then of course you realize that actually if I'm spending time making these films and putting them out and entertaining people, why shouldn't you make some money from them? And also that was my only career at the time, as well as writing the book, because all the sports broadcasting work had disappeared. But yes, you sit down and you think, and you apply yourself, and you take that chance, because again, even though, as I say, a couple of things came to me in terms of the book deal, the book doesn't then write itself, and the videos don't make themselves. You have to just, and I was quite stressed last year in terms of not writing the book, about, well, because there were two different almost books to write with an American publisher as well, but and quite a short time scale to get it done in. So you just have to get it done and apply yourself. And actually, when you sit down and you think and you shut off other distractions and you try and switch off social media and you just get down to thinking and writing, and as soon as you start writing, ideas come to you. I think that's the thing that I'm contemplating writing a second book at the moment, and I'm thinking, well, what's it about? And then you sit down, you think, there's an idea, there's a germ of an idea there, and I could go off in that direction there. As soon as you sit down and think and shut off everything else, it's amazing what comes to you.
So yeah, so there's a couple of little questions here about favourites. So we'll take them all as a winner, I think. So we'll start with, what's the best, most exciting sporting event you have covered?
Again, that sounds, I've been spoiled, because a lot of the ones I grew up watching, like whether it be Calcutta Cup matches in the Six Nations or the Masters, you go to the Masters and you're commentating from Amen Corner, or the Olympics. Doing the opening ceremony at the Olympics in Rio. I'm supposed to do it in Tokyo. We'll be doing it again later this year, hopefully. Doing that, Hazel Irvin and I were the commentators on the opening ceremony. And I think when you're sitting there in the Maracanã Stadium, and you realize you're at an Olympic Games opening ceremony and describing it for millions watching back in the UK. It's quite daunting, and it inevitably ends up in lots of abuse on Twitter because you've said something about a country that somebody finds offensive. It's not. The funny thing about the opening ceremony, I say funny peculiar, is that you cannot give the history of a country or their sporting prowess or something. And I was doing most things deadpan. I'm usually quite flippant and lighthearted, but I thought I can't be with all the countries coming in, so I'll try and be pretty serious here. So I just gave facts, but still facts even upset people about countries and history and the way that country has developed or things going on in that country at the moment or whatever it might be. So yeah, it's quite a daunting job, the opening ceremony of the Olympics. But again, you pinch yourself when you're there and you're doing it because you realize that it's a privilege to be there. So yeah, a huge number of events that I've done that I've enjoyed and had that feeling. So, but I think possibly an Olympic Games opening ceremony is right up there.
And what is your favourite Olive and Mabel moment?
Moment of videos, or just moment in general life? Probably moment of I mean, my favorite video of them, going back to filmmaking. So if you look at there was a mockumentary I made. There were a couple of ones I've made, which, I mean, the Zoom meeting was because it was kind of, that was the pivot, because that was a pivot from going from sport commentary on my dogs to actually putting them into human situations and capturing something of the moment. So I enjoyed that. I enjoyed making the mockumentary of them because that was a little bit of sort of filmmaking, parody of a behind the scenes documentary with talking heads, them as talking heads with little umbrellas in their bowls, and I've even put clip mics on their collars. So I enjoyed that. I think that passed a few people by, but that was my favorite one, I think. And then things like the parody perfume ad in the run up to Christmas, because I thought that's quite artistic. And it's also, I like things that are comments on cultural life. That's my favorite type of sort of observational humor. So I enjoyed that. But in terms of actually them in real life, my favorite moment would probably be on being on stage at the Cheltenham Literary Festival with them, or coming out the stage door afterwards and having about 30 people there going, "Oh, it's Olive and Mabel," and clamoring around for photos. We were supposed to do the London Palladium in November, which just sounds absurd. And that, as we went into another lockdown, unfortunately got kiboshed. But it was, that was going to be extraordinary. Imagine being on stage at the London Palladium, just sitting there with a couple of dogs. How mad has the world gone?
Oh, how mad! I know. I wanted to ask you, as one of these favorite questions, who were you most excited to get a retweet or a like from, given the viral nature of your videos?
I mean, there were big names in America in terms of Hollywood. And everyone goes on about Ryan Reynolds because he was quite a sort of early adopter. But then he's just bought Wrexham Football Club, so I don't know what's. He's just very fond of British things. There were a lot of comics who appreciated them, and that seemed to mean more to me because these are people who are properly funny. Limmy, Brian Limond, Limmy loved a couple of the videos, and that meant something. Then Armando Iannucci, who of course is the great satirist, he said something like, "Don't ever stop making these," or whatever. That was, and that again, that's just because of what they've done and because you admire them, that you think, right, okay, I'm going along on the right lines here.
Mm-hmm. I'm genuinely funny. It's like I met Susan Calman one time, and she said she got in the back of a taxi, and it was like, "Oh, and who are you?" I'm Susan Calman, and you're a comedian, yeah. Do you know who's really funny? By inference, that she wasn't.
Oh God, yeah, exactly. Oh no! Oh God!
Yeah, it's nice when people you admire you back.
Yeah.
Okay, let's have a little look at okay, a few more wee questions here.
So I jumped ahead. I stole Eloise's question there.
Yeah,
and I tried to answer it
you
earlier,
did.
but
So there's a question here about travel. What are you missing most? Travel would normally be a key part of your work, and what are you missing most about this given current situation?
Yeah, I think it's the feeling of freedom, which I think we're all missing at the moment. And never mind in work, I'm missing. We were talking earlier about, I love being up in the mountains and just haven't been able to do so this winter, and some of the best snow, well, up until this week, the best snow that we've had for years and years and years. So it's that feeling of claustrophobia, of being shut down. I always like the feeling that I can get in a car and go, or you can disappear off to some corner of the world. But travel in terms of work, yes, is huge. And I hate the actual process of going from A to B. But once you're in B, it's brilliant. It's experiencing different cultures and being in that place. I have to say, usually, when we're in a place, we're working. I know you won't believe it, but we are working so hard. You don't really see that place. You're seeing a hotel and a venue, but it is, yeah, it's great to try. I don't know when that's going to be possible again either, because I think the Olympics is going to happen, but I'm not sure it's going to happen. There are certain regulations that we're hearing that you would have to follow in terms of not being allowed out for a couple of weeks while you're covering the event. So you're never going to see the place. When I was fortunately in Japan 2 years ago now, a year and a half ago now, for the Rugby World Cup, so have seen it in open days. Whereas I think for the Olympics, it's going to be a very, very strange experience for a lot of people. But, we used to look ahead to 2021. There's, it's going to be fantastic. We're now doing that for 2022. 2022 is going to be great. I think it really is going to be waiting until then for things to be back to normal in terms of travel, because this year, again, I'm doing a lot of commentary now. Next weekend, I'll be doing France against Scotland in the Six Nations. Now, that would usually be a trip to Paris, obviously, and it'll be done from Salford off a monitor this year, because we can't do the travel. So yeah, you miss the trips. The trips are fun. They're hard work, but they're fun, and that's kind of what you do the job for. And at the moment, we're all just doing a job. We're not doing the fun parts of the job.
Apart from obviously this right now. And
oh no, this is wow. This
joy. This is absolute joy.
Yeah.
So, and a couple of questions just about particular aspects of sport. Is it hard to stay unbiased or calm during commenting on events such as the Calcutta Cup? And also, have you ever commented on Premier League football? If so, any moments that made you go, wow?
No, on the football thing, no, I haven't. I was asked to do football once, but no, I don't have the same passion. I think because football is such a well-covered sport and so many people know so much about football, you cannot get by in football without a real passion and interest in it. And I just don't have it. So I haven't done football. I mean, I've done lots of football coverage back in the day in local radio. I mean, I was never, every day you'd be at Tynecastle or Easter Road or Ibrox or Celtic Park, whatever. And I covered a lot of football matches in terms of reporting from them, but I've never done commentary on football. And in terms of, what was the first part of the question again?
Is it hard to stay unbiased?
No, it's not. It's not, because you really are concentrating so hard on thinking of that turn of phrase or just how to describe a certain passage of play or identification, and you're just looking at different coloured shirts. I promise you, you're not thinking about this is Scotland on the attack now. Fantastic. And also, it's so important. It's one thing I really do bang on about ad nauseum, is that I'm not there to be a cheerleader. If you watch certain channels, then that's their modus operandi. And I think more local parochial channels, that's fine. But if you're broadcasting on a UK channel, then of course you're not going to be, supporting a particular side, because the people watching might not be supporting that. I don't even support, I don't even get into it when we're doing the Olympics and it's a British athlete going well against an athlete from another country. We're not there to be cheerleaders, but that has come into sports broadcasting quite a lot. And I'm not a fan of that at all, because it's not our job to impart our partiality onto the event, because people watching back home might not like that athlete or this athlete or whoever it might be. So you just have to say, tell a bit about this athlete from Poland. Various sporting stars have interesting stories. It's not just the British athletes that have interesting backstories, and it's not just a dramatic moment for them. It is for any athlete who's competing, any sports person who's competing. So yeah, I try and do it as neutrally as possible.
Thanks.
Neutrally is not a word, is it? I try to do it as in neutral a fashion as possible.
Well, you're the commentator, Andrew.
No, but I just make words up. Say it with conviction and people believe it's a word. Neutrally he attacks. Right. God, this guy's got a great vocabulary. No, he just makes words up.
I love that attitude. So on that note of saying it with conviction, even if you know it's a load of humph wallop.
Humph-wallop. What a humph-wallop this is here. Humph-wallop. What a great vocabulary this person has.
I want to hear that in the Olympics. I'm going to listen to you commentate in the Olympics faithfully, and I want to listen out for humph-wallop.
Yeah. People do say, oh, can you get this word into commentary? No, it's not a game for you to listen to. I'm not going to get... I'll try and get the word try into a rugby commentary, or I might get the word meters into an athletics race. So no, but I don't humph-wallop. I'm going to do that.
Well, it's been an absolute joy, Andrew, meeting you. Thank you so much for giving up your time. I know you're busy and you've got a lot on, and this has been absolutely fabulous for the students to hear what you've got to say. And I especially think, coming from a degree background in arts, that sometimes can be viewed as non-vocational, and where does it go? What's the point of that? I think you've given it as a really, really nice insight into your journey, even though it has been not always the most thought through, but it's intuitive. That's lovely advice.
Look at all the interesting people in the world. They've all come from arts degrees. Don't go with the engineers or the scientists. The scientists who are saving us all just now.
Yeah, the scientists who are saving all the arts.
So the scientists could do all the hard work, and the art students will do the interesting stuff on top of it, off the back of all them saving us all. So
I like that world order. I've really enjoyed that.
Yeah, but listen, I just feel for anybody watching a student at the moment, because I look back on my life at Glasgow University, and it was 2 years, then it was a year in France, then it was 2 years, and I look back and it was such fondness and fun, and meeting people who are still, obviously lifelong friends. And, this year has been crap for you all, so it'll get better, I'm sure. I don't know if they still have, is Ashton Lane still a big thing? But you'll be out there on Byers Road before too long. So Grosvenor Cinema, there we are. That's where I watched Trainspotting for the first time. Oh, that's good. Anyway, right, listen, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute joy, and thanks to all the students as well for coming and asking your questions. So listen, all the best, everybody stay safe, and thank you again, Andrew.
All right, thanks, Anne. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.